Hi, welcome to another StudioX video, and today we are going to see an advanced use case for the Excel and PPT automation. So what we are going to see today is how to create pivot tables and chart in Excel, how to filter the data in Excel, and how to paste or insert the charts and the table and text into the PPT. So let's see what the use case is. So we have two files called mock data, which is Excel, and a presentation template file. This is how the file looks like. And so you can see there are different tabs in the Excel file. So these are the partner details. So for each partner, we have the partner, and you can see a few other more information. So what we want to do is, based on the type and the quarter, we want to create two pivot tables. So the type, based on the type, the sum of total amount will be a first pivot table, and the quarter and the sum of total amount will be a second pivot table, right? So from these two pivot tables, we want to create two types of charts. One is going to be a column chart and one is going to be the pie chart. So we have to repeat these activities, creating the pivot table based on the quarter and type, and similarly creating the charts for both the pivot tables. So these actions has to be repeated for all the sheets, or you can say for all the partners. Once we are done with this, now we have to take this data from the Excel and put it inside the PPT. Now, we will not be touching this particular template. We will be creating an empty slide, or you can say an empty PPT. We will copy each slide from this and paste it to our new PPT, which we have created. And then from the Excel, we will take the charts and the pivots and paste it to our new created slide. So let's see how we can do all of these steps into the StudioX and do the automation of the whole use case. So let's come back to the StudioX. So first of all, let's create a copy of this Excel, because we do not want to touch the raw data, or we do not want to manipulate the raw data. So let's just create the copy of this Excel sheet, for which we will use an activity called copy file. So drag it to your workspace here. Now where your file is, copy the path, and there you go. Click on the browse button and give your file path, take up the Excel file. Now where do you want to paste? Again, you can click on the plus button. In the same folder we want to copy, so there we go. In the input folder itself, we want to copy the file, the mock file, and we want to rename it as well. So here your folder ends, so give a backslash and give the new file name. So let's say mock copy is what we want the new name to be, and then give the extension of your file. Okay, so let's click on the save button. Now click on the overwrite, because we will be running the automation many times, so we do not want that we get the error that the file is already existing. So even if the file is already existing, it will overwrite the file. So we are done with this copying the file. Now the next thing that we have to do is connect with this template file, because we will be copying the slide from this and pasting to our new deck or the new slide. So there we go. Go to the PowerPoint card. You can see use PowerPoint presentation resource, drag it to your workspace, and where your template file is here in the same folder. So go and browse to your input folder, and there you see the template file, connect with the file. Now since we'll be using two files, one from where we'll be copying the slides, and the another PPT is where we'll be pasting the slides and updating it, right? So let's change the reference, because it may cause the issue later, and let's call it template. So this particular file, the presentation template.pptx, will be referenced as PowerPoint template in the automation throughout. Okay, so we have connected with the template file now. Now, next thing we have to do is connect with our new PPT that is going to be created, right? Which is not yet created, so we have to create also. So for which we will use a resource again called use PowerPoint presentation resource, and drag it inside this scope, inside the template scope. Why we are putting it inside is because we will be using the data from this into this resource. Remember, So the slides from this resource will be copied and pasted to this. So that is why it is inside one another. Now we are done. So since in the output folder, this is an input folder, so we want our new PPT to be inside the output folder. So let's copy the path and say this is where we want a new file to be, right? So again, click on the plus button and go to text, give the path where you want the file to be, then your folder ends here, so backslash. Now what you want your presentation file name to be, so let's say it as final presentation.pptx. Okay, click on the save button. So there you go. As you can see, create if not exist is checked, right? So since we know that the file is not yet existing, so when I will run this automation, it will be creating a new file called final presentation.pptx in my output folder. Okay, so this is what we have to do now. So let me just close all of these files and run the automation till this, so that we have the file in the output folder and we can further reference it in the automation. Okay, let me just run it and let's see what happens. So the bot is running now, and there we go, the last run successful. We have the final presentation file in the output folder, which is a completely blank file. And if you go to the input folder, we have a mock copy created. Now, all the pivot tables and charts is what we're going to create in this file. So click on the mock file. So then we can now start using the file. Okay, so we are now ready to create the pivot table and charts in the Excel sheet. So for that, let's use the activity called for each Excel sheet. Okay, because this is something we have to repeat for each of the Excel sheet. So for each Excel sheet, we have to create the pivots and the charts. So that is why we are using this iteration activity. Now, another thing to take care is make sure you are putting this for each Excel sheet inside your resource, which is the PowerPoint PPT that we have newly created. So let me just rename the reference so that there is no confusion and name it as PowerPoint final. So this is your final PPT and this is your template PPT. Okay, we are done. For each Excel sheet, now this Excel sheet is existing in which file? So in workbook. So to bring your file into the automation scope, one thing to do is either go to the Excel and say use Excel file. So once you do this, right, and then let me give you an example. So there you go, and you have this mock copy, right? So copy this path and give it here. Mock copy is what you want to take. And when you put this for each Excel sheet inside this scope, okay, right? So when you put it inside this, now you can see whenever you use Excel file, in the data manager, you can see a resource is getting created. So this your reference is getting created here. So if I say this as mock, right? So this is what your resource is. So all your resources are available in the data manager, right? So whenever you use a resource, this gets added here. Now, if you click on the plus button here in your for each Excel sheet, click on the plus button, you will be able to see the Excel mock, right? So now you can access all the data of this particular file into this particular activity. Now, the you can say the other way to do this is, let me show you, is using the data manager directly. So for that, let me drag this activity again outside this scope. And let's say we do not want to use Excel file resource. I just want to use the for each Excel sheet activity separately. So when you go here, now if you click on the plus button, you cannot see the file where you have to iterate. So you go to the resources, not the resources, sorry, but the data manager, and click on the plus button, connect to new Excel file and give the path to your Excel file. You can say mock copy, bring it, click on save, and now you can see a resource has been added, right? So instead of using the use Excel file resource, you can also bring your files or the resources just like this. Okay, so there is no right or wrong. You can do it both the ways. There's no issue, right? So now if you click on the plus button, now you can say mock copy. Now in this file, you want to iterate, and for each of the sheet, you want to repeat some actions. Now, what are the actions? The first thing that you want to do is create the pivot table. So for that, let me use a group activity first. Now the group activity helps you to group the interrelated activities and just put it in a sequence so that it is easy for you to understand in your automation. So let me say chart 1. So all the activities to create the first chart are being grouped into this sequence. That's all, nothing mandatory. And so to create the pivot table, we have an activity called create pivot table. So there you go. Drag it inside your chart 1 sequence. What is your source? Click on the plus button and say current sheet indicate in Excel. Now, remember, you will be getting this error, cannot find workbook, this. Excel add-in is in bad request. The reason for being is we have not clicked on the enable editing. So make sure you do not do this mistake. So now I'll click on the plus button again and say current sheet indicate in Excel. So your pivot table is from E to G. So this is your source of pivot table. Click on the confirm button. So how I have actually selected is just left mouse click, drag your mouse till G. Click on the confirm button, you're done. Your new table name, what your table name should be. So click on the text and you can say your first is the quarter pivot table. Now click on the save button, your destination. Now you want your first pivot to be from K1 say. So click on the plus button, your current sheet indicate in Excel K1 and confirm, right? Current sheet K1. So now we are done with creating the pivot table. This is just a template. Now start adding the fields. So in our first pivot table, we will be taking the quarter and the total sum of total amount. In the second pivot table, we have to take the type and the sum of total amount. So let's create the first one. Click on the plus button and say your current sheet indicate in Excel quarter confirm. This is your first field, which is going to be a row. Then click on the add pivot field, click on plus button and say current sheet indicate in Excel total amount, click on confirm button, and you want this as a value and this function has to be a sum. Okay, so now we are done with defining the pivot fields. Also we will going to have two, one will be a row and one will be a value. You can see a column which will have the sum of the total amount. So this is done. We are done with creating the pivot table. Now from this pivot table, we have to create the chart, for which we have an activity called insert chart, insert Excel chart. Drag it inside the group chart 1 after the pivot table. Now, what is your chart category? We want a column chart and the clustered column only. Now your data range. Your data range is your Excel charts range, your source range from where the chart has to be created, the source of your chart. So since we know that we are going to create a pivot table, which will be starting from K1, and since we are only taking two pivot fields, which is quarter and total amount, so we are expecting our pivot table will start from here and it's going to end by M column. So let's do this and take the data range. Click on plus button, current sheet. Click on current sheet, only hover it, indicate in Excel from K to M. Click on the confirm button, then insert into sheet. Where do you want to insert? Into the current sheet, you can say, right? Inserted chart. Now, once you have created this chart, you will save it somewhere so that you can use it later into the automations, right? So click on the plus button and say save for later use. And you can name it as, which is quarter, right? So you can say quarter chart. Now click on the OK button. we are done creating the chart now. So the chart 1 is done. We have to repeat these activities for the chart 2. So I've just copy and pasted, just simple Control C and Control V, and just rename this to chart 2, right? So now a second pivot table is going to be same. The source is same from E to G of your current sheet. So when you are in this particular sheet, you will have to take E to G, right? So E to G is what it's going to be taken, source. And now your new table name, just rename it to, let's say, this time it is type pivot table. So click on the save button, right? So because we are taking these two pivot fields, right? And now let's define the pivot fields. Before that, let's start the destination. So initially, our first pivot was starting from K and was ending to M. Let's create our second pivot table from column number O, right? So let's indicate, click on plus button, your current sheet, indicate in Excel, column O1, confirm. We are done. This is our destination for the second pivot table. Now our first field of our pivot table is going to be go to current sheet, indicate in Excel is type. Click on the confirm button. And our second field is going to be same, which is total amount, sum value, right? So we are done creating the second pivot table, and now we have to create the chart based on the pivot table. This time we want a pie chart. So select the pie and the chart type as pie again. Now data range. Now this time we are starting a pivot table from column O. And since we know that this time we have only picked two columns again, column E and column G. So let's take the range from O to Q. We are just expecting a pivot table will be spanning across only O to Q. So let me click on the plus button and say current sheet, indicate in Excel, left click, drag till Q, click on confirm button. We are done with this now. Insert into sheet, into the same sheet you want to insert, and let's rename the chart. So inserted chart name would be, let me clear the value because this was the previous one. Say save for later use and name it as type chart. Okay. Now click on the OK button. So now we are done with updating the Excel. We have now chart 1 and chart 2 created for each Excel sheet, right? Now let's start doing the updation in our template file. Let me open the presentation template file so that we can see what we are going to do. Okay, so there we go. So let's go back here. Now, what we have to do is now we have to repeat all of these steps for the PPT for each sheet, remember. So now all the actions related to the PPT should be within the for each Excel sheet. So let me just expand it, and now we will be putting further actions here into the same. Now let's start putting the value into our first slide. So let me click on enable editing. So first thing we have to do is updating the slide number 1. So let's create a group for that and say it as slide 1. Slide 1. Now, first thing that we have to do is copy this slide and paste it to our empty sheet, sorry, the empty PPT that we have in the output folder. So remember, this is our empty sheet or the file. So what we want to do is, let me just keep it as this. Okay, so now this will be copied to this sheet from template to final. Once it is copied, we have to then update the slide number 1. Then we have to go again here, copy second slide, paste it here, update. Third slide, copy, paste, update. For the first sheet, it is done. Now for the second Excel sheet, we have to do the same, and similarly for the other sheets as well, we have to do the same thing. So let's go start by copying the slide and pasting it to our final presentation. So there we go. For the slide number 1, let's use an activity called copy paste slide. So you can see copy paste slide, drag it into your group for the slide 1. Now your source presentation is not your final, so your source is the template. So this is from where you want to copy, and we want to copy slide number 1. So there you go, PowerPoint template, slide number 1. Now your destination presentation is yes, final PPT or PowerPoint final, and where do you want to insert? So click on the plus button, number at position number 1. Click on the save button. We are done with copying and pasting the file from template to the final presentation. So now we have to update this slide. Okay, so there the chart will come at this particular placeholder, and this chart will be coming from the Excel sheet, which is mock copy. So there will be the chart that we have created, and we have to copy it and paste it to the slide here, right? So to get the chart value in your automation, we'll have to first run the automation so that we can get the chart into the Excel sheet, and then we can further refer it for the automation. So let's do this, and let me just maybe disable this activity so that we do not run this activity as of now. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create the charts for each of the sheet. And yes, the new file won't be created because it is already existing, and this will be overwritten if it is already existing, so don't worry. Let me just close all of the files and run the automation again. Click on don't save, and there we go. Let's see how it updates the Excel file. So it is opening and creating the empty slide, and here we have the Excel file, the first chart and the second chart. In the second sheet, again both the charts and both the pivot tables. Third sheet, the chart and the pivot table. Next sheet, the chart and the pivot table. Okay, so now we have the charts ready with us. So now we can use it into our automations further. Now click on this, right click and do the enable activity. There we go. Now let me go back here and open all the files into the slider automation. Let me open the copy file and the template file also. Okay, this is our template, and this is a final one, and this is our mock. So there we go. We have both the charts with us, right? You can see the name is chart 1 and the name is chart 2. Again, in the sheet, this is chart number 2 because we have the chart number 1 here. Now you can actually paste these charts at a particular cell in the activity. We do not use that particular feature, but you can do that, don't worry. Now let's go back to our automation now and start the steps further. Now, once we have copied the sheet from template to the final, now we have to put our chart here. This chart, now let's copy, for which we have an activity called get Excel chart. Now drag it into the group of slide number 1 on plus button, and then if you remember, we had saved the value of the charts and saved it in by some name, type chart, and above known as the quarter chart. So now we can use these names and we can now reference these charts. So click on the plus button and say use saved value. So first is the quarter chart, say for example, and copy to clipboard. Now this chart value will be copied to the clipboard, and now we can paste it further to our PPT. For pasting anything into the PPT, we have known as paste item into slide. So drag it here, right? There we go. Into the final PPT we want to paste in the slide number 1. So click on plus number 1, click on save content placeholder. Now to get the content placeholder, go here. Now quarter overview, this is where we want to paste. So click on this placeholder, go to arrange and click on the selection pane. There you can see your placeholder name, which is quarter overview chart, right? So let's copy your placeholder name and go back here, click on the plus button, go to text and paste the placeholder name and then click on the save button. So there your chart, which is coming from your this particular chart, right? So if you go and see, your chart name was the quarter chart, right? This will be picked and so there you go, right? The quarter chart, it will be pasted to the clipboard and this item will be pasted to this particular placeholder, which is there in the slide number 1. There. Now we have to fill this placeholder with the another chart that we created, right? So we will be using the same activities, right? We do not have to copy the slide now. We will use the get Excel and there I go. Let me just drag it to here. So get Excel chart. This time we want to get the another chart, which was the type chart, and copy it to clipboard. And then again, we want to paste this item into the slide. So again, I'll copy and paste it after the get Excel chart. Now into the same PPT, slide number 1. And now this time the placeholder that we have is this. So if you click on this, now you can see the placeholder. So just see the selection pane. If I click here, this gets highlighted. If I click here, this gets highlighted. So this is how you can get the placeholder values. So copy this and click on the plus button and say text. And there you go. This is where your second chart from the Excel will be pasted. So you're done with copy pasting the charts from the Excel into your PPT for slide number 1, right? So yeah, there we go. The slide number 1 is done. Now let's work on the slide number 2 again, for which let's use the activity called group and name it as slide 2. So we go slide 2. Now the first thing that we have to do in this is, in the mock copy, we have to filter the data for each of the sheet, right? So in column E, we can see we have new business and the upsell type value. So here, if we go in the second, we want only new business data. So for which we have to filter column E with only the new business fields, for which we will use an activity called filter. So search for that activity. There we go. And drag it into your second group for the slide number 2. And now your source of filtering, go to your current sheet, indicate in Excel, column number E is what you want to filter, click on the confirm button. Okay, not exactly, let me just do this again, column number E. There we go. So make sure that you do the source selection properly. Then the column name is what we have is, so if you go back, the column name is type, right? So the column name, if I go and click on the plus button, go text, and the type is my column name, configure the filters, is equal to, click on the plus button, and let me say it should be, the value should be new business, right? So let's go back, click on the plus button and say text and say new business should be the value. I hope I have spelled it correctly, new business. Okay, that's right. Click on the save button and click on the OK. So we have done filtering the data from this particular Excel. Now we want to paste the data table to the slide number 2, right? So now one thing that you can see is the slide 2 is not yet existing in the final PPT, right? It means we have not copied the slide from the template, right? So let's just use the copy paste slide before filtering, or maybe you can use it after filtering as well, not an issue. So your source is your template file. Slide that you want to copy is your slide number 2. Your destination is your final PPT and you want to insert it at the position number 2. Click on the save, done. Now then we are filtering the file, and now after filtering the data of your current sheet from the Excel, now we want to insert that filter data to this particular slide. So for which we will use an activity, go to PowerPoint, add data table to slide, use it after this. We are done. Into the final PPT, slide number 2 is where we want to update your content placeholder. Again, we will use the same way. Click on this table placeholder, right? This is your placeholder name. Click on the plus button, go to text and say this is your placeholder name. Click on the save button. Now the table to add, click on plus, say current sheet, indicate in Excel, appears to be busy. Okay, let me just close the file. Okay, and open the file again. And there we go. So there we go, table to add, click on the plus button, your current sheet, indicate in Excel. Okay, so we want, let's say, data from column B to column G. So left click, drag till where you want the data. So from B to G is what we want, and then click on the confirm button. We are done. Your current sheet B to G data will be taken up and will be pasted to the slide number 2. So we are done with the slide number 2 now. We have copy pasted the slide, filtered the Excel data and pasted the filter data into the slide in the form of a table. Now we have to repeat the same set of activities for the third slide. So I'll copy and paste, and let's make it as slide number 3. Cool. So there we go. Now let's see what happens next. Slide to copy. Now we have to copy the slide number 3. So there we go. Slide number 3 is what we have to copy. Where to insert? We want to insert it at position number 3. Click on the save button, then filter. We want to filter the same column, and this time the type value should not be new business. The value now we want is the upsell. Okay, so let me just copy the value and go back to Excel. Is equal to your column value is equal to upsell. Click on the save button and OK. We are done filtering the data. The column E, the name value is type, will be filtered, and your configured filter table is what helps you to configure the filter value. We are done. Now we want to add the data to a slide number 3, right? So change your slide number. Slide number 3 is where you want to insert, right? And make sure your placeholder is right. So let me go back. Slide number 3. This is my placeholder, which is called table placeholder. Yes. So content placeholder, just to make sure there is now nothing change. Okay, save. Now table to add is, again, I want to take the same range and copy paste, and behavior is create new table. So let's check if we have done all the changes. We are done with the third slide as well. Now the last but not the least that we want to update in all these slides is the partner name. As you can see, the partner name. So for that, we will use an activity called replace text in presentation. Drag it here. And now in the final PPT, what we have to find this particular text, right? So let me just copy this text and say we have to find this particular text and we want to replace it with, click on the plus button, say current sheet, indicate in Excel. Okay, it seems to be busy. Let me just close it. Sometimes you may find these kind of issues, so no worries, just close all the files and reopen them and you will be able to work with it. And again, go replace with, click on the current sheet, indicate in Excel. And A2 cell is where you will be getting the partner names in all the sheets. Click on the confirm button and there you go. Replace all means it will replace in all these slides. Slide number 3, slide number 2, and slide number 1. Everywhere it will be replaced, right? So we are done with the automation steps and let me run it from the very start so that we see everything in the action again. So let's close the file, click on don't save again. Okay, so let me also close or delete the mock file, which we created as a copy in the output, create the final PPT as well. Now we will be creating everything from the scratch. Excel copy will be created. The charts and the pivot tables will be created from the scratch, and then all the charts and the data table from the Excel will be taken and pasted into a new PPT. Okay, let me run the automation and let's see what happens. Okay, the bot has started. There we go. There is a final PPT created. And this is our Excel file. Pivot table and the charts are created for the first sheet. Similarly, okay, the another chart. And now for the new sheet, the pivot table and the chart. And now there we go again for the new sheet as well, which will be for the Globex Corporation now. The pivot table and the charts will be created. Right now, it is also saving it by after creating all the charts and the pivot tables. So you do not have to save explicitly once the automation stops. It creates everything and saves your file, the Excel file or the PPT files. Okay, so the Excel part is almost done. We are at the last tab, which is the Holy tab, and the charts are getting created. So there we go. Now the last one successful. Let's see what has happened in the input. If we go to the mock copy, we have the, okay, we have the charts ready, right? Both the charts are here for each of the Excel sheet. One is a pie chart and one is a column type. Also, you can see the pivot tables if you drag to the right, right? So for the quarter and for actually the upsell and the type values. Similarly here for the quarter and for the upsell values, quarter and the type value. Again here quarter and the type value. We have created the pivot tables as well. Now let's go and check the output, and there we have the final presentation. And now you can see we have 12 slides. So 3 into 4, we had 4 sheets, right? And for each sheet, we were creating 3 slides. So let's quickly see this. First, for the Holy, we have both the charts and the data for the new business only. And for the upsell, now next slide is for the Globex, both the charts and for the Globex again, only the new business information and the upsell information. 7th is your seventh is your Acme. Both the charts are here, and then you have the type information for the new business, And for the upsell in the 10th, you have the Soylent, where you have both the charts and the new business and the upsell information. So there we go. So now you can see we have actually created everything from the scratch, all the files. So this is the end-to-end automation, giving you the basic examples of how you can utilize the automation while you're performing bulk and the repetitive tasks for the Excel and the PPT together. That's all for today, and thank you so much for watching.